Okay, so this week, week 16, last week, we've actually got 2 chapters reading. Chapter 8 we've already been into a little bit, so we're going to finish up portions of chapter 8. I think we skipped the first part of the chapter and went straight to scenes. So now we're just going to circle back to the beginning of the chapter, so read through until that scenes section starts. I've got that written down here, just in case you forget. So chapter 8 is going to be about annotations, so like dimensions, text, things like that are not necessarily model elements, they're just annotating your model. So chapter 8 is about doing that kind of thing within SketchUp. And then the next reading assignment is chapter 9, which talks about different plugins, which we'll talk about, and also layout, which we're going to get to. So let's start by talking about what's in chapter 8, which is all of your annotative tools within SketchUp. So, let me see, I've got a new model pulled up here. So, like I said, annotations are just kind of things that can help to communicate different things about your model. Dimensions, tags, text, those kinds of things. These tools, we can turn them on so that we've got those graphic tools along our toolbar. That would be under the View tab, Toolbars, and they are the ones that are called Construction here. So whenever I check on Construction, some of these you might have seen already in your toolbars. So they include the Tape Measure tool, which we're familiar with, the Dimension tool, which will be new to us today. There's also a protractor just for measuring angles. So we use Tape Measure to measure lines, just straight lines, but there's also a protractor so you can dimension angles. There's a text tool. Also included here is the axes tool. You can move or reorient the axes. We're not going to mess with that. But then there's also this 3D text tool, which we'll get into today. So out of these tools, what we're looking at today is the Dimension tool, the text tool, and the 3D text tool. If you don't want to put them as these graphic buttons and things, you can also find these tools under your Tools tab here. There's the Dimensions, Text, and 3D Text. And you'll see that they do not have a hotkey associated with them, so there is no default hotkey or shortcut key for these 3 tools in SketchUp, unfortunately. But again, we know how to create our own, so you could do that to save yourself some time. Okay, so let's get started with the Dimension tool. Let me just create a little object here. So with the Dimension tool, this will dimension lines or between 2 points. So 2 ways you can use it. If you want to dimension just an edge here, all I have to do is just, I'm only hovering over that and it's highlighting that blue. Let me make sure you can see that okay. Once I click on that, it automatically starts to pull a dimension string off of that line length, and it'll go all the way from endpoint to endpoint. What's important, you need to click on the line itself. If you click on like a midpoint or an endpoint, it's not going to work quite the same way. So if you're looking to dimension just your edge, go ahead and click on it somewhere that there's not popping up any sort of point. You can start to pull that away. You can go in different directions along the axes, up and down, in any direction that's perpendicular to that line, and then you just click to place it. The other way that we could have done this, and this is true if you just have two different endpoints that you want to measure between. Show it to you on both. You can just simply click on an endpoint and then choose where you want your next measured point to be from. So I could measure the same line just by clicking on its two different endpoints, pulling that stringer away. A dimension line is called a stringer. Pull that away and then just click to finish. Same thing over here. I can grab this endpoint, go grab this endpoint, and then pull that dimension string away too. So I could do it also with this endpoint here if I only want to know half the distance of this line, and I can pull it wherever here. So two ways, just click on a line and pull it away to dimension that entire line, or click on two separate points to dimension between the 2 points. Let's see here. Do be aware if you just click on one point, you have to choose a second point. You can't just click somewhere in space and try to dimension it that way. There has to be a physical point already created for you to dimension between those. And you can also dimension between guidelines. So if I had some guidelines created here, I can use my dimension tool just anywhere along those guidelines just the same way. I actually did kind of in a weird way. So you'll see that the dimension string just kind of wants to go perpendicular to those points. But these ones are actually giving me some different options too. If I were to do perpendicular to those in that just the shortest distance there, or it's even dimensioning them if I want to go off the green axis or even the red axis. So just as you start to move your mouse around in different ways, you can find which way you want those dimensions to go. I'm trying here the arrow key hack. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be working for the dimensions. Like when we're rotating something, we can use our arrows to find the axis that we want it across. It doesn't seem to be working for the dimension tool, unfortunately. So I think you just kind of gotta keep on moving your mouse around to find whatever way you want that dimension to go. You can also line up all of these dimension strings so that they kind of snap to each other and they can be all in one nice line. So if I've got this dimension stringer already created here, and I want to go and dimension this line here, if I start to pull it away, SketchUp does want to snap. You can see that little invisible line kind of lining it up with that existing dimension stringer that's already there. So they can be in one nice continuous line. That'd be nice if you're dimensioning a plan and you want all of your different dimension strings lined up nice and evenly just to make it look a little bit more clean. We can also dimension with the dimension tool arcs and circles. So let me draw an arc here. So if I've got an arc, I can use that dimension tool. Again, if you try and just click on the arc, not necessarily on a direct point, click on that guy and start to pull away. It's telling me the radius there, so again, I'll just click to place that. So it tells me the radius that's designated by that bar right in front of there. And if I want to do a circle, and I'll use that dimension, click on that circle. This one's giving me the diameter, so that DIA stands for diameter, it's telling me the whole thing. So arcs default to the radius, circles default to the diameter. You can, however, change it. Let's say I actually want to show the radius of my circle rather than the diameter. I can just right click on that dimension, hover over type, and change it to radius. And now it changed, it's showing me that R. Same thing for the arc. I can click on that radius, type, and diameter. And now it's showing me what the diameter of that arc would be if it were a full circle. You can also override dimensions, so change the numbers to be something different. Like here where it says the 6 foot 1 3/8 of an inch, I can double click on that and it actually lets me edit the text of that dimension. So let's say I just want to change it to 5 feet 0 inches, hit enter. So you'll see now my text says something different, but that didn't necessarily rescale my model. If I were to go and dimension this again, it's still actually that 6 foot 1 3/8 inch, but I can override that dimension to show 5 feet. But use that with caution. You don't want to start overriding all your dimensions and then you realize that nothing is of the scale that you meant it to be. So just be aware you can do that, but be cautious with it.
You just override it by right clicking?
You double click on the number. And you can do that with the linear dimensions or the radius and diameter. You can override any of those. You can erase your dimensions either with the eraser tool. So I just hit E on my keyboard and you can just erase them with that eraser tool. You can also click them and hit delete on your keyboard, or you can right click and erase. So same way, just with all our other geometry, you've got those same tools for getting rid of dimensions that you don't want. What we can also do is you can change the way that these look, the dimensions. You can edit the appearance of them. So if I click on this dimension and I go look at my entity info up here, you can even place them on different tags. So maybe you want to create a tag for all of your annotations or maybe just for your dimensions. However you want to do it, but you can change them to a different tag. And then we've got a couple of other options here. If we click on change font, we can change the style of the font. I don't know what that looks like. Oh, and it even gives you a little sample of what these look like. That's nice. Something very different. So you can really tell. Yeah, that looks different. Okay. If it had any options for like bold or italicize, those would show up here in the font style. This one doesn't seem to have it. There we go, that one has some different options. Demi-bold, demi-bold italic. And then you can also change the size of it here. So it looks like, that's weird, this is an update in 2024. Oh, you can even change the language. That's new in 2024. Sweet. So if you want to change the language of your writing there. So once I hit OK, now you can see my text changed to that new one that I chose. We can also change the size, and you actually have two options for the size. In this drop down here, there's points. And so points just have a font's physical size on the screen, and that size does not change as you start to zoom in and out. So with this number right here, even as I zoom further and further in, that text size is staying the exact same size relative to my screen. I'm zooming out, It's still the exact same size. Now all my dimension text looks really big because those are just staying the exact same point size relative to the screen. If we want it to kind of change more with the model, I would change that to height. And now I'm given inches. So it's 10 inches right now. And that is actually in scale with the model. So I don't think you can dimension line here. But if I could, here, let's do a 10-inch line there. You can see that that's basically the same height as the text. So as I start to move away, my text appears to be getting smaller because I'm zooming out. It's basically like a piece of geometry that is staying at 10 inches tall. Does the difference make sense? It's a little bit hard to describe, but hopefully you can see the difference on the screen. Sweet. And then you can also change the color of your dimensions. Up in your entity info, there's a box here, so they look like more of a gray color right now. You can click on that box. I believe this first view that you're brought here, I believe those are all the colors that are currently in your model. So if you just want to pick a color that's already in your model, if I hit OK, now my dimension changed to that blue color. Or you can also just hit the edit button and that takes you to like a typical edit material. So just be aware it did take me to the actual material that's in my model. So this is Teddy's dress color, I suppose. So just be aware that if you do start making changes there, you're actually changing the material itself. So if you wanted to create a new material, I think you have to go do that first, and then you can come back and change the color dimension. But you can also just use your paint bucket tool. A little bucket here, it's also B. So if you went and found a color here that you wanted, you can just click that paint bucket directly onto your dimension stringer, and that'll update the color as well.
For tagging, would you suggest like to create the dimensions within that specific tag, like kitchen, or does that even matter?
I think it's really up to you how you want to display them. I think it would be, I can see some benefit if you want to put all your dimensions on one tag called dimensions so that you can just turn on and off all dimensions at once. Or, I think it's also fine to put it if you're like, I want all of my kitchen dimensions to show when I have just the kitchen on. That's fine too. So it's really just probably a preference of how you're wanting to display your model. And then also we can change the kind of format of these units here in your dimension string. When we go up to Window, Model Info, and Units, just note that this is changing the units for the whole model. It's not just how dimension stringers are displayed, but it's kind of how everything, even if you're just measuring things in your model, it's going to change those as well. So right now it's on architectural format. I could change that to decimal, and now you'll see that my dimension is updated to decimal. And you can change, I'm going to go back to architectural, you can change the precision of those dimensions. So right now it's to a 1/16 of an inch, but let's say I just wanted to round to a whole inch, I could change that to 0 inches, and now you'll see my dimension rounded off to that whole number dimension. We've also got those options for areas and volumes. I'll change it there. And then just, I'll note this here. this enable length snapping, and then you've got options for your angle units as well. There's enable angle snapping. This length snapping, it actually has to do with when you're modeling a line. So right now it's to every 1 inch. Let's see what that actually means. If I'm drawing a line, SketchUp is actually snapping in 1 inch increments as I'm starting to draw. So if I've just got one there, you'll see down in my bottom right corner where the length that says 1 inch, I move a little bit more, it snaps to that 2 inches. So that's all that line snapping means, is it's just how long are these little segments created as you're drawing a line. Kind of like how we talked about with circles or arcs, it's actually a bunch of little lines making up that arc. Kind of the same with these, with just straight lines too. It's actually a series of small lines being drawn to make up that one line. And then you can also move your dimensions with either the move tool or the dimension tool. You can click M on your keyboard for move and just start to move those dimensions that way. Or if you've got the dimension tool still with you, if you just hover over a dimension, it'll basically turn into the move tool, and then you can click it and start to move it around. The only thing about moving, they only let you move along the same axis that the dimension is already going in. So it won't let me change it to now going up along the blue axis or anything like that. It's just going to stay along that same axis. So if you decide that you want it to display along the blue axis, you have to delete this dimension and then create a new one. Any questions so far? Okay. Let's move on to the text tool. Clean up my space here. Okay, so the text tool, also in those construction tools or under tools, text. The text tool creates freestanding notes. You have the same options we'll look at, like we did with the dimensions for changing the font, the color, the size, all that kind of stuff. Before we look at those, let's talk about the two different types of text that the text tool can create. There is, the first one is called screen text. Screen text is placed just fixed in a certain location on the screen. So with the text tool, I just need to click somewhere on the screen. So if I click over here, it now asks me to enter some text. Oh, I've got my caps lock on. And then you can just click away to finish that. So now this is screen text. It's just sitting here, and it's acting just like the points for the dimensions. It stays the exact same size, even as I scroll in and out. It's in the exact same place, exact same size, anywhere I go in the model. I can click on that, look at my entity info, and we've got all those same options there. Notice that I cannot change it from points to height though. Screen text just stays right there as points. You can change the size of the points, but you cannot change it to be height, like in scale with the model. The other type of text is leader text. Still with the text tool. With leader text, to create it, you have to click on an actual object. So screen text, we click somewhere off the screen away from our model geometry. With leader text, you actually click on a piece of the geometry. So if I click on the space here maybe, it starts to pull a leader away with text that is already displaying something for me. They're just going to give you different things about whatever it is you clicked on. So when you click on a face, it automatically tells you the area of that face. But you'll see once I clicked to place it, it does let me change this if I wanted it to say, I don't know, top of the box or something. I can go ahead and change it. It doesn't have to stay as the surface area. So you can click on faces. If I click on an endpoint here, its default is to give me the coordinates of that specific endpoint. So again, I click to start it, and then I click again to place it. And then again, if you don't want it to read those coordinates, you can just change it to something else, and then click away to save those text changes. So you can see, as I start to move away, the leader text is actually kind of oriented with the model. It moves around a bit, whereas that screen text I created is just staying in exactly the same spot. So if I click on this leader text, I do have the option here to change points versus height. We've got the option to change the font, just like we did with both screen text and dimensions. And I can also, same thing with both of these, just like with dimensions, you can double click them to start to change what they say in there. These ones as well, I already showed you that one, but yeah, you can just click on these, type in something different. There's also, under your entity info, these advanced attributes. If you click on these little black and white button here, this gives you a few more options. So you could even change the text from within here. Instead of double clicking it, you can just change the text there. You can also change the way that the arrow looks. So right now it's on closed arrow, but if I click this drop down, I can change it to none, and my arrow went away. There's a dot option, just a big dot, and also an open arrow, just a little bit of a different style of arrow. And then we've also got options for the leader. Firstly, you could completely hide the leader, so it doesn't have to be there. So that would be kind of your workaround if you wanted text without a leader, but our screen text isn't really what we want, because we do want it to kind of move with the model. So you'll see I turned off this leader, but it's still acting just like our normal leader text rather than the screen text. But then there are these two other options of push pin versus view-based. I'll be real honest with you, I don't really see a huge difference between push pin and view-based. Push pin leaders are meant to rotate with the model, and view-based ones are meant to always face the camera. Oh, I guess I do see the difference. Okay, so my leader here is kind of always staying in the same spot. It's always facing me. Whereas if I change it to the push pin, it kind of rotates around a little bit. It doesn't quite always look the same. I don't think it's a big difference. I don't play with it if you want, but those are your options. So with both the dimensions and the text, we saw how we could change the individual font of each one. So with this one, I could have a different color. And with this one, I could do something that you can see a little bit better. You can do it more of a beige, and I can come in and change just the individual font of this one here. Oh, that's an interesting font. But if you want to change the way that they all look, you can do that too, or you can change the way that your default looks so that any that you create moving forward are going to be your new updated style that you want. So we can go up to window and model info again, and then there's both text and dimensions. Let's look at the text one now since I deleted all my dimensions. So from here, I have the option I can select all my screen text at once. So you'll see that grabbed my single screen text that I have. Or I can select all the leader text. So now my 2 leader texts are now highlighted. What's important here, if you change these, this just changes your default option for your screen and leader text. So any new text that you create will be in this style. So if I change something here now, if I want to change my screen text to maybe 36 points, and I change it to some different kind of fonts, and I change the color, and hit OK. You'll see that my screen text didn't change. But if I go and create new screen text right now, click somewhere in space for screen text, that has my new options that I just changed here, the 36 points with the red. So if I wanted to update the old ones, I would need to select those. So you can just select all of them from here, and then you need to hit Update Selected Text. And now you'll see that that other one updated for me. So it might be a little bit confusing. Same thing with the leader text. If you go in and change these, it'll make that your default for any new ones that you create. But if you do want to update the ones that you've already created, you need to select all the leader text and then hit Update Selected Text. And now those two changed back.
Can you italicize or bold? Well, I guess those are bolded technically.
Yeah, if we change the font, so my leader text, if I went and found a font, yep, this one has a bold option. So I can hit OK there, select all my leader text, update, and now they're the bolded ones. So same thing with your dimensions, you have the options there. And same thing here, you just need to select all dimensions and update the selected dimensions if you want to see changes that you create here. Any other questions so far? Should have warned you, tonight's going to be long. Okay, so our last tool that we're looking at here is the 3D text tool. And what that one does, once I click on it, it basically makes a component of text. It turns it into like actual model geometry. So when I click on that 3D text, it's asking me what I would want to have as my 3D text. I can change the font, lots of different options. The alignment, if it's left, right, center. You can change the height. You can choose if it's extruded or not. So if you uncheck extruded, it'll just be flat. But if it's extruded and you specify how much it is by, that just gives the text some thickness. Turns it into more of that 3D. And then we can also have it unfilled. So let's look at all of the different options that we might have here. I'll start with both filled and extruded 1 inch. So then if I go ahead and hit place, it gives me my 3D text. There's my SketchUp is fun. And then if you just start to hover over different faces of the model, it'll start to flip on those different axes for you. And then you can just click to place it. And now you'll see it's got that thickness to it. If I dimensioned that, I'm sure it would be 1 inch. That's what I told it to be. And when you click on that, you'll see in my XD info, it's actually a component now. And I can place it on a different tag. It acts exactly like just a typical component. I can double click into here to start editing it. Maybe I don't want it to be fun anymore, I can just delete that. Now it's just SketchUp. You can go in here and start to paint different things. So it's basically just acting as model geometry at this point. It's really no longer text. So do note that you can't, like with our other ones, we're able to double click and update what that says. This one, I can't double click and just change the text of it. It's now just faces and edges. It's just model geometry at this point. So let's go look at it with some of those other options. Let's see if I did not do extruded this time. Place it again. But still, I can flip around on these different faces. If I just click to place it there, let's take a look. It has no thickness to it, so that was when we unchecked extruded. Just nice and flat at that point. And then the other option, we don't want to fill it, place. You can kind of see there is no face created within those letters. Still a component. So with this one, there are actual faces making up my letters. But with this one, no faces. It's just the individual edges. You can, rotate these after the fact because it's just a component at this point. So if you decide you want to orient your text differently, we can just rotate it. Just hit Q on my keyboard. I want to rotate that. Again, click your center of rotation, click a starting line, and then just rotate that into place however you like it. Okay, those are our 3 annotation tools. Feeling okay so far? Good. So then let's look. Get rid of these things. Build myself another box. I also want to look at styles today. The textbook gets a little bit more in-depth with styles than we have been getting. So again, remember your styles are over here in your default tray. So really what we've done this far is just kind of sticking to our one style, and if we want to edit it, we go over to the edit tab and just kind of make updates that way. But SketchUp has all of these different styles that we can start to use just to change the way that our model looks. So our default style was tied to whatever template you chose when you opened up SketchUp. So I chose the simple inches architectural one. So our default style for that one is just the simple style. But just like the materials browser, we've got a drop down here that gives us lots of different options for different styles that we can start to look at. So if I maybe go to photo modeling. No, I don't like those, just kidding. Sketchy edges. And I just click on one of these. My entire model kind of changes the way that it looks. Now it's just blank white empty space. And you can just see my edges have turned more sketchy and red. You can look at some of these other ones. This one. So these are all just kind of those native styles that come default within SketchUp. They're just changing all the different face styles, edge settings, those types of things. So you can start to use maybe one of these that SketchUp already has. Oh, and also just like our materials and our components, we have a little home button here that shows us everything that's in the model. And again, same thing with materials and components. Anytime you use one of them, it's going to stay in your model, even if it's not necessarily displaying on your model. Like this red one, I'm not actually using that one anymore, but it's still in my model. So if you, you can do the same thing, just go to your little details arrow here, purge unused, get rid of those styles that you're not using every so often, because again, those do increase your file size of your SketchUp model. What we can also do with styles, we can go over to the Mix tab, which we haven't quite looked at just yet. But this basically lets you mix different settings of different styles to kind of create something new. So we have our edge settings, our face settings. Those two we've looked at before, right? When we go over into our Edit tab, we've looked at these edge settings, changing the size of our lines, the colors of our lines. We've looked a little bit about our face styles when we got into that X-ray mode. So the Mix one, and we're going to talk more about background, watermark, and model settings. But on the Mix tab, you can basically, that brought me up a second little window down here. You can find different styles that you like. So maybe if I go back to that sketchy edges, if I liked those red sketchy lines and I want to use those edge settings, I can click on that one that I liked down here, and then go and update it for the edge settings. And now you'll see my model. Everything else about my model has stayed the same, except it now borrowed those edges from that red sketchy edge style. So now my edges are red and that sketchy style. Maybe if I go to a different one, color sets, maybe I like the face settings of one of these down here. I'll look at maybe this orange and green one. I click on the orange and green, and then I click on face settings. I've just now taken the face settings from the orange and green style. Again, nothing else changed. It didn't override my red sketchy lines or the way my background looks. It just simply took those face settings. So you can start to mix and match different styles, start to create your own thing. You can also just completely create your own style from scratch. Still in my styles panel, there's this button over here that has a plus sign by it that says create a new style. So whenever you do that, it basically just takes whatever's on the screen and creates a new style from that. And you can name it, do whatever, go over to the Edit tab and start to change whatever you like. If I went back to my edge settings here, I can still do my by-axis. You know, you can change up all these different things. Turn on your X-ray mode. And then whenever you want to save the changes that you've made, you'll just hit this little button that says Update Style with Changes. And now your thumbnail also changed. So that lets you know, you go to your new model, and there's my new style there as well. Let's look at some of the other options that we haven't quite gotten to yet. So over on that Edit tab, again, we've looked at our edge settings before. We've looked a little bit about our face settings before, but we have some other options. This third one is your background settings. So what do we have here? We have an overall color for the background. Let me turn off the sky real quick. So my background is just this gray color. I can click on that and change it. Whatever you might like, hit OK. And now my entire background color has changed. I can click on sky, and that now gives me my sky back. And again, I can change the color of my sky. Maybe I want a green sky for whatever reason. Your horizon, I believe that's how the sky is kind of fading into white here. So my horizon is currently white. Let's change it to red. Ooh, that's really ugly, but you know, maybe you want a red horizon. Your grass land is burning. Yeah, Arizona sky, yeah. And you can also turn on a ground plane if you'd like. So this one right now is green. And change it to whatever color you like. This show ground from below, I can't quite figure that one out. Because if you go down here, you don't really see the ground. I don't understand the show ground from below. Oh, I guess it changes a little bit. If I uncheck it, I see more of my green sky. If I check it, it's kind of more of that purpley color. I don't know if that really does a whole lot for you, but it's there. Looks like you can also change the transparency of your ground. Doesn't seem to be changing too much for me. I don't know what SketchUp's doing. So you can change your background settings. And remember, if you want to save these changes, you do need to hit that update style button. See, I think if I just go back to select, yeah, my style that I created, it didn't save. My little thumbnail still looks like the original. So if I click on that, it's going to go right back to those original background settings because I didn't hit the update style button. Which is kind of nice. Maybe you do a bunch of different things and you're like, man, this does not look good. Just don't update it. And it won't override anything. Okay, so those were our background settings. The next one is watermark settings. So a watermark, you can basically put like an image over your model. So let's take a look at what that might look like. To add a new watermark, just hit the little plus sign here. And it's going to ask you to choose an image for your watermark. I've got one downloaded. So I'll go ahead and open that one up. And you'll see this is my image that I had downloaded. I'll show you what the image looked like. Oh, you can't even see it because it's a PNG, it's transparent. Okay, well, the image just says sample across. So maybe this is just a draft that you're working on and your client says, hey, can you send me this? And you're like, well, it's not really ready yet, so let me throw a watermark over it, and it says that it's not ready yet. Or, maybe you see it a lot with like stock images, things on Adobe Stock, they'll have like a watermark displayed over it so that nobody can copyright it, nobody can steal it because it's got that watermark on top of it. So, let me bring back my thing here. So once you click on your image, it starts to automatically display there. You can give it a name. I'm just going to call mine sample because that's what it looks like. And then you've got two different options for your watermark. You can put it in the background, which is a little bit hard to see exactly what it did, but it basically went behind my model geometry. I've got my X-ray mode still on, so you can still kind of see it through. But it puts it behind your model geometry. If you do overlay, it puts it kind of on top of your model geometry, so you can kind of see what that difference looks like. And then you start walking through the steps. I'll hit next. You can choose to create a mask or not, and you can see how that kind of changes the way it looks, if it kind of fades into it a little bit more or if it stands out a bit more. You can also change the transparency if you want it to blend in a little bit more with the model or just kind of completely disappear. Change the way that looks. Next again. And then kind of how you want that watermark to be displayed. So right now, it's stretched to fit across the screen. You can tile it across the screen. Now I've got a lot of little tiny samples, and it also lets you change the scale of those. Or you can pick a certain position on the screen. So that brings up, right now it's centered. Maybe I want to put it in the bottom left, so that moves down to the bottom left. Maybe bottom center. And again, you can change the scale of the way it looks up there. What I didn't talk about on the stretch to fit screen, there was this lock aspect ratio. So that basically just keeps the proportions of the image. So if you uncheck that, then that truly stretches it across the screen and doesn't really pay attention to the proportions of that image. So if you lock it or unlock it. And then you finish, and you've got your watermark. And so you'll see the watermark is acting like that screen text. It's staying the exact same size across my screen no matter where I start moving around.
You upload your own logo.
Yeah, if you want to create your own type of image or your logo, yep, you can certainly do that. Or you can just download something off the internet, whatever image you want to put in there. You can choose if you want to display your watermarks or not for this particular style. And then you can also delete those just by clicking on it and hit that minus button. And it does tell you that it is permanently deleted if you update it this way. So yeah, I'm going to remove mine anyway.
And how we got to watermarks was in styles.
Yes, styles on the edit tab. And then you've got these 5 little boxes across the top here. The 4th one is your watermarks. And the last one, our 5th one, is our model settings. So this one, let me actually change my edge settings back to all the same color. Might be a little bit easier to see. And I'm actually going to change them to black. Okay, so those model settings. So the first one, selected, turns blue. What does that mean? It means whenever you select something, it turns blue. My edges turn blue. And so that's how you know it's selected, is that it turned blue. Well, maybe you don't like blue because blue is also the color of the blue axis, so it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. You click on that blue color, and you do have options whenever you're choosing colors. If you want to do RGB, or you can change it to a color wheel, however you would like it to look. Let's choose this nice bright pink color. Hit OK. And now if I go and select these things, they're pink instead of blue. The locked one, that's like whenever you're drawing something and, or rather, you're moving something and I hold it down, I believe it shows that red color. Oh, maybe not, because that's locked on the green. I'm not entirely sure what the red locked is. I might have to figure out what that one is a little bit more. Next one is your guidelines. Those are showing black, but you can change the color again. Maybe you want a purple. Have some purple guidelines. If I create a section, and I make it, Oops, I still want to see it. I want it to be inactive. There we go. Inactive sections, they show gray, but you can change that. Maybe I want it to be blue. And then whenever you double click that section and make it active, it's orange. Again, I can change that. Section lines, section fill, that poche. And let me turn my X-ray back off so we can see. Oops. Section fill is that gray color. But again, we can change the color of our poche if we wanted to. So you've just got lots of different options here. Your section line width. See those sections where my cube is being cut are a little bit thicker. Bump that up even more. Make those thicker. You can choose if you want this certain style to display hidden geometry, hidden objects. I don't have anything hidden right now. Let me hide something. Oops, not erase. Hide. I can still see that hidden geometry because I've turned those on here in my style. If you don't want guidelines to show with this style, we can turn them off. We can make it so that we don't see section cuts at all in this style. And again, if you want to save those settings, just hit that update scene button. So lots of different options that you have for your different styles. Questions about those? And the reason I'm showing you styles today is as part of your assignment, those different scenes that we created, you can link different styles to different scenes. Let's actually take a look at what that looked like. I'm going to create a new scene here. And let's say for this scene, I'm going to go up to my styles, over to my select tab, and just look at what's in my model. I'm going to change this one back to my simple style. And you'll see my guideline came back on. I don't see that hidden geometry anymore. My section is back because in this style, over in those modeling settings, I have guides turned on. I have hidden geometry, hidden objects turned off. So all of those things changed as I went to a different style. So for this scene, let's have this style. And again, I'm going to go ahead and update my scene since I made some changes with that style. And then let's go ahead and make another scene. Maybe I want it to show my section cut here in my box. I'm going to turn on or unhide this really quick. So maybe this next scene, I want to be more of just like a section, looking inside of here. Let's do a front view. We're going to turn on that parallel projection to make it look like more of a two-dimensional view. And I'm going to go back to this different style. And let's choose a different style that makes it a little bit easier to tell what's going on. Let's do this one. Oh yeah, you can definitely tell the difference on that one. Okay, so now I've got that style going. So I'll go create a new scene. This is my scene 2. Okay, so if I go back to scene 1, double click it here, it went back to that other style. It's that default simple style that I saved to my scene 1. If I go to my scene 2, it went back to that more black and white style that I saved with this particular scene. So that's going to be part of today's assignment, is just to try out different styles with your different scenes, yeah.
So you didn't have to hit any kind of update or anything, it just saved it in the scenes.
The first one I did have to hit update because I made the scene first and then I made some changes, so then I went and updated the scene. For the second one, I made all those changes and then I created the scene, so the scene was created with all of those changes already with it. If I wanted to change something about scene 2 here, I could go change it to one of those different styles. Now here I would need to go and update my scene because I did change something. So now the next time I come back to that scene 2 will be that new style that I added it to.
I thought that update was like those little round circles in the default tray, but where did you go to update that?
There are 2 places you can do it. You can be in your scenes panel here and right click your scene and hit update scene, or you can come to your tabs, right click and hit update. Any
So
other-
what could you give a good example of why, how you would use that in a setting, like in a real life
Yeah.
situation?
Yeah, let's say, all right, my scene 1, I'm going to, maybe I need to update this. Okay, so let's say that my scene 1 here is going to be just like in our overall 3D view. Oh, darn caps lock. And so for my overall 3D view, I might want it to look a little bit more realistic. I want that sky to be in there. I want a ground plane. I want all of my materials to show as they are. So I might use something that looks more like this. But then maybe if I had, maybe my scene 2, I want it to be, let's change it to a floor plan maybe. So I'll create a new section. Actually, you know what, let me go have this other one pulled up. This other model, this might be a little bit better.
Yeah.
Okay, so for my 3D, we'll just say that I want it to show going with colors, and I want all those different types of things to show. Start going here and putting some different colors around. Or like maybe I'm going through an interior perspective. I want all of those different materials and things to show. But then maybe I go to a floor plan type of view. And I move it more like a top view. And that parallel projection. Well, let's say maybe I want this to be just more of like a black and white construction type of drawing. So for this one, I would probably change to, let's look at the different styles we have. Hard to tell if there's one already default that I kind of like. Let's just change one. So with this style, some things that we can already notice is that everything is now more black and white. And there's no ground plane, it's just all nice black and white. So for a construction type of drawing, that if I'm gonna go in and dimension this and annotate it, I want it to be really clear and legible, easy for the contractor to read. So I just want it to be black and white. But more of those pretty views that are maybe meant for my client, I'll make them all with materials and a nice sky background and things like that. Does that help answer your question?
That makes sense.
Okay.